you probably don't live in a Mission Impossible movie. So you should really think about what are the realistic security risks for you. I did a video about all the sorts of things that people should be really paying attention to with their Google accounts. And even though that was a very long video, I intentionally did not cover certain things because they weren't as realistic as some of the more basic things. Recently, there was someone who made a topic on the r/Gmail subreddit that originally I thought was in good faith, but as this person kept responding back to me, I feel like I'm just being trolled. So their original post was Google account recovery phone. If I lose my phone, it will also have my eSIM connected to my recovery phone. So what's the right approach? Should I mix recovery phones with friends or something else? And so I thought about this for a little bit because in my previous video, I did discuss the importance of setting a recovery phone, but I also discussed the importance, the challenge was making sure that you're not limited to just one device. If you can avoid Google account recovery, you want to do this because generally Google account recovery has more limited options, whereas knowing your password and then being able to set your own two-step verifications gives you more options. And so if at all possible, you want to stay in that realm of setting a lot of second steps for two-step verification and away from the realm of that automated account recovery. But throughout that video, I also emphasized the importance of checking to see whether any of these factors is dependent on a particular device or dependent on something that you may not be able to have access to in case you lose your account. For example, if you have anything that's based on Google services and you can't access your Google account, then you probably can't rely on it in an account recovery situation. This idea of having an eSIM, which is not a physical SIM, that if you lose your phone, then in theory, you lose your eSIM. But when I got thinking about this is actually not as big of an issue as you might think because you can always regenerate an eSIM. So if you lost your phone, you could, in theory, go to your phone carrier, call them up. And as long as you know whatever your account security, password, recovery for that carrier is to authenticate yourself with them, that you should be able to generate another eSIM. If you're really worried about this, check out whatever your carrier policies are to see what you would need to provide if you called them. I said, ideally, you want to avoid needing to use account recovery at all. So really, it's not about adding multiple recovery phones. It's really about adding more two-step verifications and making sure that those are diversified. And then I put parenthetically, I'm not an expert, but my understanding is you should check with your carrier about the process of requesting a new eSIM. And the response from the guy just made me feel some kind of way. He said, I think the issue is more about timing. If someone gets access to my phone, it will be able to change my password and my recovery number faster than I can prove my identity and get an eSIM for my recovery number. No, I've definitely seen threads where people getting their phone stolen is a big issue. So I'm not going to say that that's impossible. But the question on my mind is, don't you have an unlock code or biometrics so that if someone doesn't have your thumbprint, they can't get into your phone? What I more commonly see than someone just getting the phone and being able to do whatever they want with it is one of two scenarios. One is that because the user doesn't have that phone and they haven't set up a diversity of two-step verification options, that no one can get into their account, but they also can't get into their account. The other thing is I will see reports that the phone gets factory reset. And I understand that there are some vendors that do factory reset protection so that it really can't be used. But in this case, it's not that the device is being used with one's Google account, it's that someone else is trying to use it with some other Google account. So the risk of your phone is taken and then someone just gets in and immediately changes your Google settings. But you should have some sort of mechanism to unlock your phone that should not be easily replicable. There are, however, new things coming out from Google to try to address this kind of issue because they know that in some countries around the world that having your phone yanked out of your hands is something that happens. So I didn't talk about this in the last video because I don't think that that necessarily happens to everyone, but you might want to look into theft detection lock and then Find Hub, which is formerly known as Find My Device. Now, these two things are opt-in rather than opt-out. You have to set it up before you need it. But the idea with theft detection lock is if the gyroscopes and the sensors within your phone detect that it's moving too fast and too far away from you, then it can automatically lock down the phone. That way, even if they've taken it and they've run off and they're gone, they can't get back into the phone. The other thing with Find Hub or Find My Device is if you have logged in a phone onto your Google account onto this Find Hub, then if you can log into another device in that same Google account, you can remotely wipe or lock that phone. If you haven't already set that up before you lose access, or you don't have access to the Google account from any other devices, then these things don't work. They have to be set up in advance if you think that's the threat vector that you experience. But again, the guy took my response and they answered, and this got me heated. Let me know if I'm feeling wrong and I should be more humble. But they responded, "Thanks for the effort, but I don't think you're considering the worst case scenario. Assuming shoulder surfing, someone managed to get my unlock code and not being able to lock the phone quickly, imagine you're not near the place with other devices. The attacker has time to play with your Google account. Stolen device protection only delays an attacker from changing your Apple account password. No connection with Google." Again, if you're using biometrics, then even if someone is shoulder surfing, they're not getting into your account. I guess someone could be sophisticated enough to clone your fingerprint and use that somehow, right? But we're not in a Mission Impossible movie. That's realistically not going to happen. If you think that the most risky thing is that someone is looking over your shoulder and has your unlock code, then maybe you should also consider things like biometrics. Every person has to assess their own level of risk given where they go, what they do, where they live. Consider what's most realistic to happen to you and build your security practices around that. Realistically, what I see most often is people don't have recovery phone set up at all, or it's not up to date. They don't have the recovery email. They don't have enough two-step verification options, or they're all connected to one device. They've just lost access to their account and they can't recover because they don't have enough other factors set up. I have seen some instances of device thefts and devices being factory reset, but the problem is not that someone else is getting into that Google account. It's usually that now no one can get into that Google account and there's no recovery options for anyone to do that. Realistically, when I see people losing access to Google accounts and a hijacker or hacker getting into those Google accounts, it's for something that none of this stuff is going to prevent. And that is downloading and running an info stealer. These hijackers, they will try to disguise that as whatever to convince you that it is something that you want, something that you care about, so that you will download it and click it. So with a lot of YouTubers, it'll be fake sponsorship offers with fake websites to convince them that this is legit. And then they'll say, here's the contract. And that contract will not be a PDF. It'll be some sort of executable. And they'll click on it and it won't appear to do anything. But what it's doing in the background is it's running the info stealer. And how that info stealer works is when you log into something or when you go to any website, it generates a cookie, right? And this is remembered so that when you visit that site again, you don't have to log in again. And so there's this balancing act between convenience and security, where we have collectively agreed that we don't want to have to log in every single time that we go to a website. And so we have these session cookies that retain that state. Challenge is if you don't have to re-log in, then anyone else with that session cookie also does not have to re-log in. So what the info stealer does is it allows that hijacker access to the Google account without needing to know the password up front, without needing to have the two-step verification, because if you wouldn't need to re-authenticate yourself, they don't either. Honestly, the challenge with these is because even if you have two-step verification, a highly complex password, recovery phone, the info stealers bypass that all, the only defense against this really, truly is extreme vigilance, being careful of what you're looking at online, making sure not to download anything suspicious. And again, they're going to disguise it as something else. So being critical about game cracks, app hacks, sponsorship offers are where we see these hijackers embed their little surprise. But that's nothing to do with whatever this guy on Reddit was talking about. And to be honest, adding more recovery phones, all those things won't help in that situation, because once you've clicked on the info stealer, it's gone. If you have a YouTube channel, you can reach out to YouTube to assist. If I'm missing something, please let me know. Again, a lot of these things that this guy was talking about, I didn't think were very realistic. Other than that, thanks. Bye.